Welcome to CGTN.
Thanks for having me.
May I say the topic is very daring to answer how to cooperate in a fragmented world. How is that topic being come up?
We call it as we see it right now in the international system. We really feel this is a pivotal moment for the international community to come together. We have now had a very tough year, 2022, in terms of a lot of crises that are really touching everyone around the globe. The energy prices, food prices. Of course, there are concerns around the global economy. And so we feel that coming together after 3 years here in January at the annual meeting in Davos, 2,700 leaders from around the world, business, political leaders, it's so important to come together. So we're calling it as we see it because we see that over the past few years there has been decreased levels of cooperation. We've seen more fragmentation, but at the same time we see that all these challenges are global. And so if we don't say now clearly that we need to cooperate, we need to try our best to come back together, we will not make the progress on climate, on trade, on energy transition, or at least sufficient progress that is so critical right now.
Right. But, you know, just by putting the topic out there, give you the danger or the challenge of fulfilling what you promised at the very beginning. You might want to come up with some answers at the end of the meeting.
It's really a call to action. It's a call to the international community that, again, after 3 years of not being able to meet properly in person, we need to find ways, either open some ways that we know have worked in the past, or even find new pathways to cooperate. So we're not naive about the international system as it is now. We're actually very practical. We're saying, okay, we've seen certain things that have maybe led to fragmentation, but how do we work on some of the issues that we really need to work on in the meantime, while we maybe fix also some of the larger issues, but how do we actually not stop? How do we continue our work, for example, on climate or the energy transition, which really cannot wait for fragmentation to continue.
But you know, I understand that before every annual meeting, you have been the World Economic Forum. You are, of course, doing a lot of research, talking to different stakeholders in order to come up with the most appropriate topic. So tell me more about your research process, what you have learned from people before the meeting even started.
It's really, you're right. We are a multi-stakeholder organization, so we work with business leaders, political leaders, we work with global shapers, people under the age of 30, young global leaders, social entrepreneurs. We, of course, also work with top-class researchers, economists, etc. And so we've been really hard at work over the past 6 months to really be able to find the right balance for how we can really be useful. But what is even more important is that this is just a milestone in the ongoing work of what we call communities of purpose. So one thing that I wanted to share with you is that yes, it's important to prepare a summit, but actually a summit is only a milestone on a continuous journey of business leaders and politicians working with us also on key issues. One example is something that we have around, we call it First Movers Coalition, which is an initiative of business leaders and governments coming together to look at how we can actually work within the supply chain so that we make it easier for companies to invest in renewable technology. So it's a very action-oriented, purpose-driven community. They will have a meeting here as well, but they're using it as a milestone in the ongoing work. So overall, we are really very focused on ongoing work around impact, and the annual meeting is a big station to power us forward. But it's not in itself. It's actually, there is a journey after that.
You know, there have been enormous amount of cynicism, pessimism. I think that's taking place in a lot of the conversations around the world. However, how would you be able to, with a few thousand delegates coming over here from all over the world, be able to feel pumped up when they come to the end of this meeting and feel much more confident and be able to see the hope of trust at the end of it?
We have this can-do spirit because rather than just sit back and let the different crises happen to you, it's really important that we find the courage, frankly, collectively,
where does it come
to reinstitute the sense of agency to act. Now, where does it come from? I think partly it's really the opportunity to come together. Let's face it, we haven't really been able to have even frank conversations face to face, and we hope there will be frank conversations face to face because these are difficult issues. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that we are really focused on solutions, because if you are bombarded in a way with different messages around crises and you are facing these very tough decisions, sometimes you can have a very tunnel vision, you can have a very short-term vision, you can be overwhelmed by a sense of crisis. And so you really also need to have a little bit of a horizon vision where you look around, you're able to exchange views with your colleagues. And here what we will be doing a lot of is putting forward a lot of innovators. So we are bringing, for example, 100 what we call global innovators, unicorn companies, but also we call them tech pioneers, so more startup level companies, but really all focused on concrete solutions around energy, climate, mobility, etc. And we believe that putting those solutions out there would contribute to the learning that we need to have to be on the front foot around solutions.
Meanwhile, you also have quite a number of developing and emerging economies coming over here from all continents, from Latin America, from Africa, certainly from Asia. So how do you see, all of these very different voices? They might have very different practices. They might have very different traditions, but be able to bring out the best of theirs and be able to share.
This is actually very important. Take the energy transition. It is so important. We are in Switzerland today. We are an organization, a global organization, but headquartered in Geneva. So it's so important, and we are doing it here, that we take a global view. So for example, on the energy transition, as you know, there is this triple imperative, if you will. You need to make sure that, yes, we implement the transition, so the sustainability part, but we also need to make it in a way that is we have affordable energy, so affordability, and we also need to make sure that we have enough energy, so security. And we are working, we have ongoing work with not only developed economies, but also emerging markets, because we recognize that there may be different views around the speed, the priorities. We have all the same goal, but how do you make sure that we do have some kind of a wider consensus around how we can move all together?
And what is going to be China's role? What do you expect? We understand the delegation of China will be here, and they are quite strong in number and also in their level of sophistication. The Chinese Vice Premier Liu He is going to give his speech at the forum. So what do you expect to be the contribution of China, for example?
You're right. We are very glad to have the Vice Premier with us. He will also be accompanied by a number of officials. You'll have the central bank governor here, among others. You will also have 25 big companies from China with famous names of companies, also some state-owned companies. It is so important, and I think people are really hungry to understand the perspectives in terms of how we can solve these practical issues in front of us. Of course, on the economy, I mean, the role of China could not be more important in trying to make sure that when we see these risks of recession that are still not they're still not off the table, as you know, for this year. And of course, we need to all work to make sure that if should there be a recession, or if in certain economies there is a recession, that it is as short and as shallow as possible. And so the role on the economy in itself is hugely important for China. So a lot of the economic messaging, I think, is going to be super important. But also just on some of these common challenges that we have on climate, energy transition, trade is going to be a big, we're going to have a lot of focus here on trade because it is a big source of growth. And so we've seen it decrease it a little bit also because of COVID. So how do we make sure that we ramp up the levels of trade so that we can drive recovery with that?
Now, we are having this World Economic Forum annual meeting almost coincides with China's Spring Festival.
Yeah.
And it's always the most celebrated occasion for many Chinese around the world. Anything to share with our audience on behalf of the World Economic Forum and especially the theme building team?
No, first of all the best for the new year then. And really, I hope that then this will be a year of more cooperation for all of us and hopefully less crises.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.